The mountains always seemed to us like a place to forget oneself and have a good time. My friends Jack, Linda, Jason, and I decided to pack our backpacks, gather some food supplies, and head to the mountains for a skiing trip. But what we found there was far from expected. The road to the resort was snowy and difficult to pass. The wind was whistling in our ears, and gloomy clouds covered the mountain tops. I looked at my friends and smiled. "This is going to be an unforgettable weekend," I said. When we arrived at the resort, the sun had already set, and the snow had become heavier. The wind whispered strange stories, but we paid no attention to it, although perhaps we should have. We rented a cabin at the edge of the forest. It was quiet around, only the rustling of leaves and the wind, which was whistling in the snow-covered trees. I snuggled under a warm blanket when I heard some whispering outside the window. I thought it was my friends talking, but when I opened my eyes a little, I saw them all still sleeping. The whispering continued, sounding like voices calling me. "Come out, Tom," something whispered. I got out of bed and approached the window. Outside it was night, but I could see outlines of figures standing in the darkness. "Who's there?" I asked, but there was no answer. The whispering grew quieter and then stopped altogether. I sighed and returned to bed, deciding it was just a dream. The next morning, we went skiing. The snow was fresh, and the weather was perfect for skiing. We glided down the slope, enjoying every moment. But as the sun began to set, something started to change. We lost the trail and got lost in the forest. The wind grew stronger and darkness engulfed us. "We need to get back to the cabin," Linda said, but none of us could find the way back. As darkness completely enveloped us, we heard the whispering. The same whispering I had heard at night. "Follow us," the voices whispered. We stopped and turned around, but there was no one around. "This must be your imagination again," Tom Jack said. But I knew it wasn't my imagination. Something was wrong in these mountains. We continued on, but the whispering didn't stop. It grew louder and more enticing. We walked deeper into the forest until we finally emerged into a clearing. There, in the darkness, stood a figure. "Who are you?" Jason shouted. The figure slowly approached us. It was dressed in black and moved slowly through the snow. We turned and ran, but darkness swallowed us. The whispering turned into screams of horror. We stumbled in the snow, trying to find a way out, but something was chasing us. Suddenly I fell. I turned around and saw it was Linda. She was screaming and pulling me down. Horror was on her face. "They're here," she screamed. "They're here." We ran like mad until we finally reached the trail. Ahead was our cabin. We burst inside, locked the door, and caught our breath. Only then did I notice Linda wasn't with us. We rushed outside, calling her name, but she was gone. We sat in the cabin all night, listening to the terrifying sounds from the forest. Whispering, screams, sounds of approaching footsteps. But in the morning, when the sun rose, all the sounds stopped. We found Linda a few days later. She was found deep in the forest, but she wasn't herself. She couldn't remember what had happened, but she had a look as if she had seen something terrible. We left those mountains, but the shadow of the past will always follow us. We'll never know what that nightmare in the mountains was. But I know one thing: those mountains hide secrets better left unknown.